This practical is Piriformis, and Piriformis we know has that weird funky change. It's debated between 60 and 90 degrees. So to make sure, I think if I do this side you can see it. So to make sure that we're not getting into little nuances, if it's 60 or 90 degrees, you're only gonna flex the knee up to 60 or below. So somewhere between like 45 and 60 degrees. Relax. Because like I said, there's that debate of between 60 and 90 is where that internal external rotation change happens. So about 60 degrees. And then with this one, you're actually gonna have your patient, sorry, can you straighten your leg out? Expose their umbilicus, their belly button, because that's gonna be your point of reference. I'm gonna say, can you pull your shirt up for me? And then do you mind if I check this down? So we are gonna have draping. You can even do a little bit of a diaper drape on this one. You can use the same, I should have said this for the hamstrings, same kind of diaper drape for the hamstrings. These bike shorts just make it so much harder. Is this yours? So for this, you're gonna be using the umbilicus as your point of reference, and you're gonna be going in like quarter percentages. So you're gonna first just bring the legs straight up into straight hip flexion, and then you're gonna move it into adduction, and you're gonna say it's 25% of the way across abdomen towards umbilicus, at umbilicus, 25% past umbilicus, or like 75% past. If this is 0, 25, 50, 75, 100 would be all the way to the other side. Does that make sense? How I'm measuring that?
Yeah. Maybe.
Okay, so if I'm assuming that his trunk is 100% width, straight up would be 0, so I'm 0% abducted. 25, and his umbilicus is 50%. Sorry. So 25%, 50%, 75, 100, or you can say like 2 umbilicus, 25% past umbilicus, 25% before.
On the video with Dr. Leva, she was saying like 25, 50, 75, and 100 to the umbilicus. So
Was it 100 to the
like
umbilicus
halfway
or
to
past?
the umbilicus is like 50%. That's what she was.
I mean, either one
Either way
is okay.
Okay.
You just need to be clear and
With
tell
your
me
reference.
what percentage
Okay.
to what reference you're using.
So this, you're not really gonna be able to stabilize. You're just gonna have to, or did she stabilize here at the hips? Did she stabilize here? Did she do this, or did she have both hands in the video on the leg?
She like looked over and she
Yeah,
was like,
okay.
you gotta use the.
So you're gonna, this table is stabilizing, but you still wanna make sure that you're not getting pelvic rotation, because that will obviously give you a false negative.
What you would do is, as you're moving across, kind of place a downward force
Yeah.
through the femur to make sure that the pelvis isn't elevating.
And ideally, I would actually have the table lowered, because it's hard for me to try and come up and look down and do that force here. I'd want the table lowered so I could have good body mechanics, good visualization, but
What does she mean by like false negative, false positive?
like
For
negative,
MLT?
there's no tightness if I can get him all the way across.
Oh, okay.
But if I can do that if his pelvis rotates, but if I'm holding him here, looking, making sure first resistance, he doesn't get nearly as far. And here I'd say he's like, if you're going to the umbilicus, he's about 75% of the way to the umbilicus, or I would say like,
25% from the umbilicus.
yeah, however you want to phrase that. So I get, you're right. The umbilicus, she does use that as the reference. That was my mistake. So I would say he's 25% of the way from the umbilicus, or 75% of the way. And then if he was going past, I could say he's 25% past the umbilicus, 50% past. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Questions on either of those two MLTs?
So
And I'm sorry, I was flexing the leg up too much.
Yeah.
So again, that's why you want to lower the table, because it's very hard trying to like come up and over. So keeping them below that 60, about 60-ish degrees, making sure that that pelvis isn't rotating. It's going to be a lot of visualization, making sure you have good line of sight and bringing him over, and I feel resistance here. The one thing you also want to make sure that you're doing is not looking at the tibia. Oh, I forgot the internal rotation component, sorry. End range, internal rotation, and then you start bringing him over. So the one thing that you want to make sure you're doing, because this is how it gets really tricky, is you don't want to look at the tibia, because if I look at the tibia, I'm going to say, oh, he's 50% past the umbilicus. But what you're looking at is where the knee is in relation to the umbilicus. So hip flexed up, internally rotated, maintaining that position and making them breathe, relax, bringing him over. So from here, the knee is about 75% of the way to the umbilicus. The tibia I don't want to look at because it's going to look like he's going past. Does that make sense to everybody?
So your line of force is into adduction?
Adduction. So like with the, when we did biceps, we did extension, pronation, or however way, whatever method you chose. Same thing. Flexion, internal rotation, bringing him over to that first resistance, not looking at the tibia, looking at the midline of the patella.
Are you looking at that in parallel with his body?
So if there's lines running up and down from his body, then I would be looking this way. That makes sense. So hamstring straight leg raise is actually fairly straightforward. It's just heavy work because you're lifting the whole leg, and making sure that you're not just letting their knee kind of snap out. And then the piriformis.
For the hamstring, if someone has hyperextension, do you want them to be in neutral or hyperextended?
You let their knee relax. You're going to hold at the ankle. So that might be a situation. If it's causing them pain, we'll get to the next test where you're doing the it's called the 90-90 test, but we won't worry about that for right now. Yeah, just letting them relax and holding at the ankle.
When you go into internal rotation, you're going to end range.
Yes.
Do you have landmarks to measure it or no?
The piriformis or hamstring?
Piriformis.
The belly button?
Okay, so you don't really, that's right.
Middle,
You don't
middle
use it going-
patella. Any other questions? All right, practice those two.